All right. Let's get this going. All right. So we're here today to talk about being a moderator for WisCon. We've got a couple of different things we will cover. We are going to cover both online and in-person moderating. Some of the Discord moderation will be a little bit truncated, or the Zoom. Sorry, not Discord. Discord moderation is a whole different thing. We don't cover any of that. This is purely for panel moderation. So this is either if you're doing online or in person. So my name is Gretchen Jones. I use they, them pronouns. I have a background in doing both academic and convention moderation, but I am by no means an expert. There are definitely people who are probably in this chat, if not at WisCon, who have done a lot more moderating than I have. So if any questions come up, anything during the training that you want to follow up on, definitely either shoot it in the chat, or you can send it to me, or send it to panels@wiscon.net, and that can be handed off to me. So let's get started. What is a moderator? I like to think of moderators as conversational facilitators. It is not your job to dominate the conversation, but it's your job to run it, make sure it runs really smoothly. So I love Star Wars and Star Trek, so they will probably come up as examples throughout this training. So I think of it like you're the communications officer. You're the one who's monitoring the channels, making sure that there's no interference, making sure people are communicating clearly with each other. You like music at a party. You get things going, you keep the party flowing. Someone in the last training mentioned an orchestra conductor, which I really liked that analogy. So it's your job to make sure that the people, who are, maybe you want the woodwinds to be a little louder and maybe you want the brass to be a little softer, or, take a step back. So I've really liked that analogy as well. It is also the moderator's job to keep an eye on time. Look out for off-topic panelists, unruly or chatty audience members, bunch of other things. Also, I'm going to start and end with this, is you are invaluable. You may not be as flashy or get as much attention as the panelists, but mods are really, really, really important. You make these conversations happen, you keep them flowing, you keep them going, you keep things on track. So you're a really invaluable member of the WisCon team. So that's something I want to make sure that I keep coming back to, is just how important this role is. What are a moderator's duties? There are 3 primary duties. The first is facilitating conversation amongst the panelists prior to the convention. Second is facilitating the conversation between panelists during the panel itself. And the third is managing audience Q&A. And we're going to go through them one by one. So first off, facilitating conversation prior to the convention. So for some folks, this is already in process. For others, this will be part of the process for the next couple of weeks before the con. So one thing that's really important is that moderators connect with your panelists prior to the convention. So what this means is that prior to the convention, you're going to be reaching out to your panelists, and you are going to be emailing them to start the discussion about the panel. Why? Because panels run more smoothly if everybody is prepared. When we suggest that you do this as soon as possible after your assignments are finalized, which those have been finalized for about a week. It's okay if you haven't done that yet. Some of you haven't been to the training yet, and we still have a couple weeks, but we do recommend getting on top of that as soon as possible. Sooner is the better. How you do this is done since the schedule has been finalized. If you were to log into wiscon.net and you clicked on the My Schedule in the top menu, it would pull up a list of your panels, and in that list you will find the panelist email. So you'd just be able to copy and paste those into an email and send them out. But that's where you would find it, is in the wiscon.net account under My Schedule. Reaching out via email. So there are several things that we suggest that you do. Introduce yourself, name, pronouns, ask for any preferred names and pronouns if you don't have them already. Some of that information is available in the My Account when you see what your panel looks like, but you might also just want to ask anyway. Sometimes, people might have their, legal name in the panel description, but might prefer to go by a nickname or, some other reason. So we suggest that you introduce yourself, ask your panelists for their preferred names and pronouns so that you will have them ahead of time. Number 2, determine your introduction process for the panel. Typically, this is self-introduction. So once you introduce the panel, then the panelists would introduce themselves. But some panelists might prefer that you introduce them. And if that's something that they would like, then you would just need to get whatever information they wanted shared from them. But chances are good that they're probably going to self-introduce. Number 3, ask the panelists if they have any accessibility needs and forward them to panels@wiscon.net. This is probably going to be more relevant if you are doing in-person panels. And this accessibility needs could be anything from needing extra space for a mobility device, needing more lead time to speak because maybe they're slow to start. Maybe they want to have a specific technology aid like a computer or a tablet for their notes. Or wanting to sit in a specific spot. Maybe they're, hard of hearing in one ear and they want to sit in a certain way so that they can hear everybody else on the panel. Or maybe it's to alleviate anxiety, or maybe they want, an extra spot for a caretaker to sit near them. It can mean a lot of different things, but we do recommend asking for those accessibility needs and then forwarding anything that might require the con to help provide it to panels@wiscon.net. And then we can, the panels team will work with you to take care of whatever the accessibility needs are for your panelists. Number 4, suggesting or soliciting a panel structure. Depending on your panelists, they might want to have things more rigidly structured, more clearly defined up front, or they might be fairly loose. But this would be your chance to say, hey, how do you want to do this? Do you want to talk? Do you want Q&A? How much time for that do you want? This would be kind of the time to figure that out. And your panelists may not want audience participation. Most of the time they will. But this would be soliciting the panel structure would be part of what you want to do is just kind of know upfront what your panelists are thinking. Number 5, determining the group's understanding of the panel description. So for example, I'll give you an example of what I did because I sent out my moderator emails earlier this week. So I provided them with a description of the panel to remind them. And I said, based on what this panel description says, I feel like the 3 or 4 main topics we need to hit are A, B, C, and D. Do you agree? Is there anything I'm leaving out? Is there anything you want to modify? So this is just, again, to make sure that everyone agrees prior to the convention what it is that the panel is about and what you're going to be talking about. We recommend, I will get into more details about this later, we don't recommend changing the panel topic, mostly because the audience is coming to hear you talk specifically about what is in the panel description. That's their expectation. However, if you don't like the way a panel is described, or you want to interrogate some of the things that are brought up in a panel description, you are more than welcome to do that. I have definitely been on a panel where we did that, where the description of the panel, all of us panelists were like, I don't know that we agree necessarily with the premise in this panel. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why we would want to reframe it or talk about it slightly differently. But we did it that way to make it a part of, we're still technically talking about what the panel description is. We're just kind of interrogating why it was written that way. So everyone is welcome to do that. But like if your panel is about the women of Star Wars and people come in and you're talking about the women of Star Trek, that's just a totally different panel. So, but this would be the time that to refine kind of what you all agree you're going to be talking about. And as a part of that, would be, numbers 6 and number 6 and number 7. So determining like what the panelists, what their interest is. Why is it that they want to talk about, why is it that they want to be on this panel? What are kind of the 2 to 3 main talking points? So that's number 8. What are the kind of specific things that they really want to hit? Ask each panelist to provide a list of like 2 to 3 points that they specifically want to talk about. And part of that might be determining, number 7, that if you're going to talk about specific books, specific TV shows, specific movies, any specific resources that you want to cite and really dig into, if they're not mentioned in the panel description. Sometimes panel descriptions will say, will provide examples if you're on like a more conceptual topic. Like one of the ones that I'm talking about is that I'm going to be on is colonialism in the social sciences. And like there are some works cited in that, but one of the things that I want to talk about is R.F. Kuang's Babel. So that would be something I would tell my moderator is like, that's a book I really want to make sure that we mention and talk about at least briefly. So that's, 6 through 8, figuring out what exactly specifically they want to talk about. Once you've decided on kind of the main topics, you can make a list of kind of secondary or even tertiary topics. And this is a good thing to have a list beforehand and to take with you to the panel, because then, maybe your discussion wraps up more quickly than you thought. Maybe the panelists have a bit of a brain fart, which I have totally had on a panel, and I've kind of forgotten what the main points are. You as the moderator, if you have a list of both your main points and secondary points, you can kind of bring the panel back to the discussion that you've all agreed that you want to have. Number 9 is equally important, which is asking if there are any topics or media that panelists want to avoid. This can be specific to a panelist. One specific panelist might say, I don't want to talk about, say it's a Star Wars panel, and you're talking about, Princess Leia, and you're like, well, I don't really want to talk about the sequel trilogy, but other people are welcome to talk about the sequel trilogy, but my main interest is the original trilogy, so I just want to talk about that. That's fine. It can also be a group decision. Your panelists may decide, well, we want to talk about Star Wars, but like we don't actually really want to talk about Darth Vader. So we're not going to talk about that. And you as a group can decide this is just a topic we don't want to talk about. Once these boundaries are set, respect them. Respect your panelists' boundaries. We're going to come back to that again. You are welcome to ask exploring follow-up questions. Like, you say you don't want to talk about, Andor in this panel. Are there other Star Wars topics you don't want to mention? Are there other specific characters you don't want? This is like this conversation that's happening prior to the panel is just that. It's a conversation to get information for you as a moderator so that you can help the panel go as smoothly as possible. So any information you might think to ask, you're welcome to follow up with your panelists about. This would especially be important at this point, discovering if there's anything they want to avoid, if there are any potential triggers. A panelist might tell you, I find it really triggering to talk about assault, so I would prefer to avoid that in the panel if possible. This might also be a time you might find out that through a conversation like this, it might turn out that the panelist might not be a good fit, or you might have some concerns. That's fine. They probably won't come up, but if they do, you are welcome to reach out to panels@wiscon.net. If you have concerns about a panelist being on a panel for whatever reason, as Kat mentioned in the last, she's in charge of panels, like she doesn't know everybody who signs up to be a panelist. And we can't always vet everyone before the con happens. So if through this conversation, through this email, you get any kind of sense that anything is either weird or off, or the panelist might be an uncomfortable fit, or maybe even that the panelist, has decided that they may not be a good fit. Any of those things, please reach out to panels@wiscon.net. And then the final thing, I kind of skipped ahead a bit. So number 10 is discuss meeting up before the panel. Make sure that everyone knows that if they are available and can do it, to meet up in the green room 10 minutes before, which we will, talk about next. If a panelist can't make it, let them know to meet you in your assigned room. And this is again for in-person panelists. And then, check the schedule, make sure everyone knows what room you're in, where you're meeting, and how that process is going to go. We also suggest kind of maybe touching base with your panelists the day before the panel. So the day before, whatever that is, whether it's Thursday through Monday, we do recommend maybe just shooting a really quick email the day before and just being like, hey, just a reminder, this is our panel, this is our time frame, this is our room. I will meet you in the green room or I'll see you in the panel room. So that is reaching out via email. Next, meeting up before the panel, in-person moderators. We will talk about online moderators next, but meeting up before the panel. So this would be the day of the con, 10 minutes before your panel. We recommend that you as the moderator go to the green room before the panel starts and you get your name tents. What's a name tent if you've never been a moderator? They will be little pieces of paper that you fold in half, and they will sit on the table where you have your where your panel is, and there will be one for each panelist with their name on it. There should be one for you as the moderator, and there should also be one that says the name of the panel on the front, and on the back of that little tent, it will have a description of the panel, which is great because then you have it with you. If you can't make it to the green room 10 minutes beforehand, whether it's because you have another panel, maybe you're coming in from, you're staying in a different place than the con hotel, but if for whatever reason you cannot make it to the green room 10 minutes beforehand, please let your panelists know ahead of time. And feel free to pick up your name or panel tents early. You would just have to go to the green room and explain the situation to the volunteer who's going to be in charge. Or you can designate a panelist to do it for you. So if possible, we recommend you do this, but if you can't make it, there are other procedures. If a panelist is running late, and you didn't know about it, if they didn't tell you beforehand, I'll meet you in the room. Let someone in the green room know when you leave for the panel room. Just say, talk to the green room volunteer and just say, hey, my name is Gretchen. I am moderating the panel on women in Star Wars that starts at 2:00. One of my panelists isn't here. I don't know why they're running late, but if they do show up and ask, just let them know to go to the panel room. Because that way, if your panelist runs late, they will know where to find you. After that is done, if you've met your panelists or know that you're going to be meeting them in the room, you get to your room, make sure the microphones are working. If you have time. Just like a very quick, easy thing that you can do to make sure the panel runs a little bit more smoothly when everyone talks. Just, do a quick mic check. Make sure that they're turned on. I will say about 7 times out of 10, if a mic is not working, it just has been turned off. If you're the first panel of the day, you might need to make sure it's turned on. And sometimes even if you're not, because sometimes moderators or panelists turn the microphone off when they leave from the previous panel. So make sure they're on, make sure they're working. Make sure that they are distributed evenly across the table. And then you should be good to go. And then you would be all set up for the panel to start. All right, let's talk about online moderators. Your procedure is a little bit different. The basics of what you do are the same for online or in person, but kind of the process of getting things started and keeping things running is a little bit different. So meeting up before the panel, if you're an online moderator, the panels are scheduled either for online Zoom Room 1 or online Zoom Room 2. This is what they're called this year. In the past, they've been called Ansible. So if you are, have been an online moderator in the past and you're used to Ansible, the new terminology is online Zoom Room 1 or 2. There is an unmonitored, meaning there's no moderator. There's no one in there, making sure that things are, no one's running it. It's a non-private Zoom meeting room called the Green Room, is available. So that if you want to, quote unquote, meet your panelists before the panel and just kind of chit chat or to say hi, you are welcome to go to that green room. Because it's possible that someone is using the Zoom room before you are. If you have any questions about this, then there is a green room Discord channel on the WisCon Discord. So joining the Zoom call, everyone, it's just going to be a regular Zoom call. Like I said, there are only 2 available. So there might be a panel in the Zoom call before yours. So if you pop in, if you get there early, you might interrupt someone else's panel. And if you do, just kind of sit in the background and enjoy the 10 minutes of someone else's panel. There's not going to be any waiting room. There is going to be one link, like I just said, there's one link per online Zoom room per day, which is going to be available via the online version of the program. If you access this PowerPoint or the PDF available, which are going to be available for folks, there is a link to the program, which is just program.wiscon.net /welcome. But that would be where you would find the Zoom call. Also, panelists and mods, you will receive a link to that via email. So you don't have to use the online program, but it is available via the online program. But you will get an email that specifically has that link for you, including links, meeting IDs, passwords, all of that. Oh, I forgot to take this out. We're not actually streaming online panels, so ignore that. That was the thing we did in previous years, and I forgot to take it out of the training. We are not going to be streaming our panels for YouTube. Or at least maybe they're not going to be available like after. There were two separate things. So some of your panels might be, some of the in-person panels might be streamed, which is a separate thing. We're still kind of figuring that out. So if you're an in-person panelist, some of the panels might maybe be streamed, but it's entirely going to depend on the amount of volunteers that we have. For Zoom in the past, we made online panels available via a YouTube link after the panel ended, but we are not doing that this year. So FYI, that should be it for meeting up. More about online moderation. There will be with you as the moderator a volunteer production assistant. The role of this person is to manage the technical side of the Zoom, starting and ending the stream, which we're not going to be streaming, but like dealing with any technical issues, coordinating a captioner if there's one on the call. They are also going to be in charge of dealing with any kind of disruptions from the audience, including removing abusive or harassing audience members. They will also provide time signals. In the online panels that I have moderated in the past, frequently what this means is like their video will pop up and they'll give you like a hand signal that says like 5 or 10 minutes. So that will give you a visual cue as the moderator as to how much time you have left in your panel. So this is mostly to let you know, you don't have to worry about anything that's, technical, and you also don't have to worry about monitoring the chat for anyone who might be abusive or causing problems. That is the job of the volunteer production assistant. So chat, like I just said, there is going to be chat. It's going to be enabled. It moves very, very quickly. Like you probably will not be able to monitor it yourself. If you want to designate someone that you know who's going to be in your call to like take notes about good questions that come up during the chat, feel free to do so. More than welcome to. It might be the only way that you see some of the stuff from the chat. Yeah, if you happen to, feel free, or you can designate someone to take notes, to bring up audience Q&A. There will also be a Discord server on the WisCon Discord for each individual panel. And audience members are encouraged to use that panel for side conversations. Like if a panelist brings up something interesting and a bunch of the people in the chat want to kind of go on a bunny trail that's not entirely related to the main panel, we encourage them to use the Discord. I have also seen audience members use the Discord to like do the equivalent of live tweeting. So if someone cannot, someone maybe doesn't have video enabled, or to save it for later, because we're not recording the panels, someone who wants to like live chat what's happening in the Discord channel might be a way to like save the conversation for future people to read. So that's available for audience members. You are welcome to remind them when you start your panel online to say, hey, there's a Discord channel with the panel name. Feel free to go in there and use that to chat on the side, and you can chat in here and ask questions. So And then the final point, like I said, feel free to take notes, and you can bring them up during Q&A. If you designate a Q&A time, that would be a time when you would want to take a closer look at the chat. You will probably want to monitor the chat if you're doing Q&A. Okay. Next, we are moving from, we have now covered everything that leads up to starting your panel and discussed what happens during a panel if you are in online. So we're going to shift to the second role of a moderator, which is facilitating conversations during the panel. All right, so getting started. Very beginning of your panel. You've gone to your green room, you've gotten your tents, you've checked the mics. It's now 2 o'clock and it's time for your panel to start. Start on time. If there is another panel in there before you and they look like they're running long, you are welcome to tell them to leave very politely that you have a panel to start. And to encourage people to, go to the Discord channel or have conversations in the hallway. But we recommend starting on time. Next up, introduce yourself as the moderator, and explain any kind of ground rules you might have. This might include if, how, and when the audience can participate. If you're having Q&A, remind people, kind of how long the panel is going to be, when Q&A might start. This might be a time that if you want to say there are topics we're not going to cover, you can mention them here. Other kinds of ground rules you might do, for example, would be, this is especially helpful for roundtable panels, which we will talk about, but I also like to encourage it in the panels that I am moderating, is that if someone says something that people really resonate with, think it's really interesting, that we kind of avoid clapping. Clapping can be disruptive, but like maybe just like a snap, like you're in an 80s, beat poetry like club. Sounds kind of silly, but it works really well because it's non-disruptive. It's fairly quiet. So people can keep talking, but it also allows people to express their appreciation for something that was just said. Introducing after you've introduced yourself, explained any ground rules, then introduce the panel topic, read the panel description, and then allow the panelists to introduce themselves and explain their interest in the topic. Usually this is about 1 to 2 minutes a panelist. And then if, prior to the panel starting, you've been emailing with your panelists, you have your own, you will have your notes about discussion topics, secondary topics, things to avoid. Feel free to bring that in whatever form that you want. I usually have it on my phone, but if it's better for you to have it on paper, a laptop, tablet, all of those things are fine. Whichever way is most convenient for you to have them at hand and available for you. I like things on my phone, but sometimes like paper is easier because then I don't have to keep turning my phone on to see my notes. But again, whatever works for you. You're welcome to have those at hand and keep them with you as you start the panel and then keep going. One final note for accessibility and safety notes. This is for in-person panels. When microphones are present, use them and make sure all the panelists do too. Some of us don't hear well, and it's hard for us to participate if there are no microphones. And you can't always tell who those people are going to be. We will talk about this when we get to Q&A. If you can encourage a panelist to speak loudly, and if there's no way for them to be heard, either repeat their question into the microphone or have them come up and repeat their question into the microphone. Again, for accessibility reasons, we encourage the use of microphones at all times if possible. Keep your masks on for COVID safety, except between sips of liquid. Remind your panelists to do the same. And then as part of the COVID safety measures like we had last year, you might have an air filtration box in it, and it might be noisy. If you want to turn it off during the panel, you can, but make sure to turn it on again when you leave. If there are any other specific accessibility requirements that your panelists have brought up or that you need as a moderator, like I said, feel free to reach out to panels@wiscon.net beforehand. So we've gotten started. Now we're going to move into the real meat of moderator training. This is best practices. So primarily be vigilant. This is one of the primary roles of the moderators, to be vigilant, stay alert, be aware of the conversational dynamics, be aware of the mood and feel of the room. Getting a sense for how people are feeling. Are people feeling sleepy? Are they uncomfortable? Are they agitated? It might help determine the way the panel goes. Like if you can tell that people are really enjoying staying on a topic and people are into it, feel free to keep going on that, even if it runs over. Like we set aside 10 minutes to talk about this topic, but if everyone's enjoying it, you're the one who can read the room and, keep things on that topic. Or if you get a sense that people are getting agitated, you might want to cut things off. So be aware of the room. Be aware of ways the conversation can go awry. This can be anything from awkward jokes, someone getting abusive, someone being accidentally or intentionally harmful. Just, creatively think about the way things can go wrong. If you are prone to anxiety, like I am, my brain is constantly doing this. But you are welcome to do that. It's mostly just like a feel free to think of the way that things can go wrong. And if you need or want to step in to kind of nip things in the bud, you are welcome to do so. That's part of your job as the moderator. Additionally, I want to say specifically to white moderators like myself, being vigilant is especially important for us, especially if we are on a panel, if we are moderating a panel where there are a lot of Black, Indigenous, or people of color on the panel, and or the topic is specifically about those experiences or about an author who is from one of those backgrounds. Part of our role as moderators and people of privilege in this space at WisCon means that we are responsible for doing as much as possible to make our Black, Indigenous, and other people of color attendees, panelists, and audience members feel as safe as they can. We want to know that we want them to know that we respect their voices and will step in to prevent abuse if necessary. And also that we will respect their space to speak and give them as much room as they need. This, of course, applies to other marginalizations, other axes of privilege, but this is just something that's really important to me and I know is really important to WisCon. So as white mods, we have a little bit of extra work to do. But I believe in you. I believe in all of us. So do's and don'ts. For do's, this is what I like to call the MODR method, MODR. So this is a little handy acronym to help you remember the 4 most important things. So being a moderator and facilitating conversation is about maintaining flow and equitable participation. And a handy dandy way to remember that is MODR, because you're the moderator. M, keep the conversation moving. O, keep the conversation on topic. D is don't forget the clock. And R is respect your panelists. And we are going to go through these one at a time. So keep the conversation moving. Try to minimize awkward pauses and meandering panelists. Keep the pace up as much as you can. You may need to cut off a panelist who has hijacked the discussion. If someone is talking too long, especially if it is, if you have a panel of where there is especially a person of color and someone who is white on the panel is talking a bit too long, you may need to cut them off. Politely, but firmly. Just say, hey, we've heard a lot from you we've heard a lot from you in the last few minutes. I would like to hear from someone else on the panel, and shift the conversation that way. You may need to move the part of this might be moving on to the next talking point. If the panel or the panelists are going too long and you can tell that the audience is getting a little bit restless and that you might need to move the conversation along, that's your job. Step in, very similar to what I just said. Hey, we've been talking about Princess Leia as the leader of the rebellion for a bit, and I know that we wanted to talk about Princess Leia as a general in the sequel trilogy, so let's move on. Let's talk about that. You may need to find a way to perk up a sleepy audience or a low energy group of panelists. So sometimes you might need more or less intervention, depending on the mood. A lot of being a moderator, like I said, is keeping an eye on the room and the people that are involved. I can give you guidelines, but I can't tell you exactly how your panel is going to go because I don't know. It's going to depend on a lot, but I can give you some, helpful guidelines and some, like I said, creative ways that things might go wrong. So your list of additional questions that you made during your planning might come in handy if you need to perk up a sleepy audience or a low energy panelist. If they're not feeling the conversation, you might need to bring in a secondary topic. And hopefully that might get people more energized and engaged in the conversation. So in light of that, keep your list of primary and secondary topics handy in whatever way works best. This can come in useful if you need to shift topics, if things are getting sleepy, or if there's a lull in audience Q&A. Sometimes you plan for 15 minutes of Q&A and there aren't any audience questions, in which case, if you have some secondary topics, you can switch over to those instead. Next, keep the conversation on topic. Like I said a little bit earlier, we do recommend sticking as close to the panel description as possible. Especially if you are doing a structured panel where you have specific panelists versus, say, a round table discussion. And the way that I think of it is that the audience is coming to hear a specific conversation, one that is described in the panel description. That's why they're coming. That's why they're there. So we want to do as best we can to maintain audience expectations. However, there may be times where you make exceptions. That's why I say we encourage that this be like kind of your mood going in. But if your panelists get kind of off topic and they're on a rabbit trail and you kind of get the sense that the audience is also into it and really enjoying it, you might want to let the conversation go. Let it continue along those lines. But as a general framework, we do recommend sticking to the conversation that is listed in the panel description. So you may need to redirect your panelists, audience members during Q&A, or even yourself back to the topic at hand. As moderators, we need to make sure that we're not allowing kind of our own personal biases or areas of interest to direct the conversation. We are not there to make sure the conversation goes in any particular direction other than what the panelists want to talk about. If you are functioning as a co-panelist, your role is going to be slightly different. And I will come back to talking about being a co-panelist. But if you are just a moderator, your job is to make sure that the panelists get as much time to talk about what they want to talk about as possible. And even though we might be a moderator on a panel that like we are really interested in certain things about, we want to make sure that we're keeping our focus as much as possible and not allowing kind of our own, if the panel is about Star Wars and I just really happen to love talking about Princess Leia, if the panel is about Star Wars in general, it's not my job to keep bringing the conversation back to Princess Leia just because that's what I want to hear people talk about, for example. This is why it's useful to keep the panel description handy. Like I said, if you're doing an in-person panel, it's going to be on the back of that little table tent that you put on the table with the panel name. If you're online or maybe you want it to be closer at hand, you can have it on your phone, print it out, whatever works for you. But having the panel description handy that you can refer to can help you keep things from getting kind of too off track. If a panelist resists being moderated, this is something that came up in the last training. Keep trying with increasing firmness. So if someone is talking too long and you just politely say, hey, I've heard a lot from you. Let's move on to someone else. And they try and keep talking, just say, hey, we really have, you've been speaking a lot. We really want to make sure that everyone has been taught, that everyone gets an equal chance to speak. Please stop talking. If it verges over into a safety concern or abuse, contact safety. You are even welcome to say so in the panel. Like, I feel the need to contact safety right now. So if someone in the room could go grab someone in safety, they will be visible. They'll be wearing orange vests, I believe. And you can designate someone to go get safety and remove a panelist if it becomes necessary. Hopefully it won't. But this is mostly to say you have you are empowered to remove a panelist if they are becoming overly disruptive or abusive to the panel. And you are empowered to take the steps before getting to that point. You can interrupt them. You can talk over them. You can ask them to stop talking. That's part of your job. It may seem rude, but this is the one time where you kind of get to be rude if it means making sure that there's equitable participation and things stay on track. D, don't forget the clock. This one's pretty straightforward. It's going to be your job to keep track of time. And especially if you've planned Q&A, you will want to keep your eye on the clock to make sure that things can wrap up for QA to start. You may need to remind panelists or the audience members how much time is left. For example, if you know you want to save 10 minutes for audience Q&A, maybe 5 minutes before that 10-minute mark, just say, hey, we got 5 minutes left before we want to start Q&A. Panelists, let's hear your final thoughts. You've each got like a little bit more than a minute, go. So don't forget the clock. R, this one is really important to me. Something I care a lot about is respecting your panelists. So we talked about this a little bit before as part of being vigilant. But when you are in the room, make sure that all panelists have a chance to speak and intervene if someone is being talked over and shut out. This is especially important when there are axes of privilege. Things like gender, race, class, ability are things that can influence participation styles. It is part of your role as moderator to be aware of the kinds of power dynamics and that, and if necessary, if panelists or audience members are exercising their privilege to dominate the conversation, it is your job as the moderator to step in. Again, especially important if there are axes of privilege. You may need to encourage a shy panelist to speak up. But if you get signals that your panelist is uncomfortable with your level of encouragement, back off. We want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak, but sometimes panelists freeze. They might get up there and just get really nervous and kind of freeze in front of a group of people. So you may need to call them out. But if you can tell that you're making them uncomfortable by, calling them out, please back off. I have been in a panel in the past where this happened, where I could tell the moderator was very gently trying to encourage a panelist to speak. And I watched as the panelist got increasingly uncomfortable with being called out. And the moderator didn't pick up on that. And it makes everybody uncomfortable, not just the panelists, but also the entire room. So if you're getting signals that like they are struggling to participate and don't want to be paid attention to in that way, to be called out, then, very gently back off. Maybe give them a few minutes, let some other panelists speak, and then maybe circle back later. But again, always very gently and always respecting that if they decide that they, if they freeze and aren't sure they want to talk, let them be. Respect your panelist boundaries. If there are topics or pieces of media that the panelists don't wish to discuss for whatever reason, do not force them to discuss it. It can be anything from it's triggering, I don't like it, I'm not interested, it's too spoilery. Those are just some examples of reasons, but they don't actually have to have a reason. They may just not want to. And if they don't want to, respect it. If you have elicited of a list of the do not discuss topics prior to the panel, and you've made that clear to the audience, stick to it. And you may need to remind the audience, hey, we as a team, the panelists and I decided that we weren't going to talk about Darth Vader in this Star Wars panel, so we're not going to talk about him. I'm really sorry, but we've decided that that's something that we don't want to talk about. Maybe talk about that in the Discord channel, for example. And then finally, let the panelists shine. In whatever way this means. This can be a lot of different things. For shy panelists or panelists that you might be able to tell are uncomfortable for whatever reason, feel free to offer encouraging comments. That's a really good point. Wow, I never thought of that. I really like that. Interesting. Or you can, cover for a panelist that's struggling with words. If you can tell a panelist is struggling, something like, what I hear you saying is X. Is that correct? Is that what you're trying to say? And that way they get to look their best. And they don't have to feel embarrassed or awkward. As much as we can do that, especially for people who might be shy or struggling. But otherwise, like we try, moderators, we try and keep our interjections to a minimum, but it may be useful for conversation flow and to encourage your panelists. So your role might not be flashy. I'm going to reiterate this again. Your role might not be flashy. Not everyone might recognize that the work that you're doing, a lot of times, I think that a really good moderator is kind of invisible to the panel. And so I want to take the time to say that, like, if that's what happens, if you kind of fade into the background so that other people get a chance to talk, and most of what you do is just keep people on topic and focused and everyone is having fun, like, thank you. Also, what you've done is essential and beautiful and a part of what makes this con such a special place to be and to go to. So you don't have to be the center of attention, but I want to give you attention and praise, both here and afterwards. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Don'ts. 4 don'ts. Don't dominate the conversation. Again, unless you are a co-panelist, which is the next slide, we are not participants in the same way that panelists are. If you have a full panel, which is typically going to be 3 or more panelists, is considered a full panel. Being a moderator is not meant to be an opportunity to be an additional panelist unless your panel is short-staffed. You're the coach on this team. You're the conductor. Your job is to make sure that the panelists are set up to have the best conversational possible amongst themselves and have the audience participate when necessary. This is their platform to speak. Our job is to ensure that they have the best chance to do that as they possibly can. So if you're a moderator who is not a co-panelist, don't dominate the conversation. Don't focus on your own work or writing at the expense of the panelists. Again, your role is to highlight the panelists and what they have to say and what they have done. If you are a writer or a creator in some way and your work happens to come up during the conversation, that's fine. But being a moderator is not like an opportunity to freely advertise yourself or your own work. This is about the panelists and what they have to say. Don't veer widely from the panel description. We've talked about this a couple times. If you get the sense that, like I said, I'm going to just repeat myself. If you get the sense that everyone in the room is on board with, getting into the weeds, that's one thing, but we do want to try as hard as we can to stick close to the panel description, because that is what the audience is here to have the panel to hear, is present in the room to hear the panelists talk about. I was going to say here. And as I said before, if you don't like how the panel description is written, you can make that a part of the conversation. There are ways to interrogate and engage with a panel description that you and the panelists don't like. But we don't recommend just completely changing the topic of conversation once you get in there. And then the final don't is don't change the structure or content of the panel at the last minute. So when you and your panelists determine a structure, when you're talking before the convention, stick to it as much as possible. If you've decided on 10 minutes of audience participation at the end of the main panel, for example, don't at the last minute decide to allow audience questions throughout the panel. In fact, we would encourage not allowing our audience participation during a panel that is not a roundtable discussion, just in general, because that can be disruptive. But if you have a specific structure, unless everyone agrees, so unless you and all of your panelists agree, stick to your established structure, because changing it at the last minute can be disruptive. But yeah, like I said, you can keep kind of secondary or tertiary topics handy. If you have those handy, that's not changing your structure. This would be things like, we decided our 3 main topics for the panel, but on the day of, I decided that we should talk about these 3 other things that came up during the email. That's not okay. Stick to what your group has decided as much as you possibly can. And if you make a mistake, it happens. Don't worry. We're going to talk about handling that later. So next, we are going to be talking about being a co-panelist, which I mentioned can be a thing. When might this happen? So for the vast majority of all of you who are moderators, you are just going to be functioning as a moderator. You probably have a full panel, meaning that you have 3 or more panelists. If you are a moderator, so if you are assigned to a panel as the moderator and there is one other person on the panel besides you, there is one panelist, you are automatically a co-panelist. If there are 2 other people on the panel, you may be a co-panelist if everyone in the room agrees. So this would be the kind of thing to come up in your email that you send to everyone beforehand. So when you write your email to your panelists before the con, if you notice that there are only 2 panelists and you are the 3rd person, then you might say, hey, I see that there are only 2 of you and I'm the 3rd, I'm the 3rd person, but I'm technically the moderator. Would you like me to participate? Are you comfortable with me joining you as a co-panelist? And if everyone agrees, go for it. And that's great. If your panelists would prefer not to, also respect that. But if there are 2 people, you may function as a co-panelist, you may not. But everyone should agree kind of what you're doing. When you are a co-panelist, it is even more important to make sure that you're not dominating the conversation. To remember that you are not just a panelist, you are also the moderator. So while you are participating more than a pure moderator, you are also participating less than a full panelist. You're kind of existing in this in-between space. Again, especially if there are elements of privilege. So take extra care to not dominate the conversation. Take extra care to ensure that all of the other panelists get a chance to speak. Discuss your dual role with the panelists beforehand. That's what I just said. And also then make the audience aware of your dual role when the panel starts, just so that everyone can set their expectations. And especially if you're going to have Q&A, because it is the moderator's role to manage the audience, it benefits you if your audience knows in advance that even though during the discussion you are going to be looking more like a panelist, you are still in charge of Q&A and you are still kind of the adult in the room and are empowered to manage the audience Q&A when that starts. Just kind of lets everyone know what your role is and how they can expect to behave. Roundtable discussions. This is new. We are doing a new thing at WisCon and having roundtable discussions. So a roundtable discussion is when there's not going to be like a table up front with 4 panelists. Basically, everyone in the room is a panelist. So it is equally important to remember to MODR, to keep it moving, keep it on topic. Don't forget the clock and respect your panelists. In this case, your panelists are everyone else in the room. So all of those principles still apply. I am going to offer a suggested method to help facilitate the conversation. You are welcome to use it. And if you do use it, you should probably explain it to everyone in the room before you start. But again, you don't have to use it. This is just one that I have used at other conventions when I do roundtable discussions, and it seems to work very well. So this is hands up. We're going to talk about hand raising and why hand raising is important when in a roundtable discussion. So with lots of voices in the room, it can be really tricky to keep the conversation under control. So this is going to be a method that we are going to offer to you that may help you keep the conversation moving in on topic while also giving a chance for as many people to speak as possible. It's pretty short and sweet. So if you do decide to explain this to everyone in the room, it should only take a minute or 2. So we do like the simple way to think about this is this is a way for you as a panelist to at a glance know who wants to speak about what. So I'll explain. If someone wants to add to what the current person is saying. So we're in a Women of Star Wars panel, and someone is talking about Princess Leia as leader of the rebellion. And someone says, oh man, I really want to talk about Hoth specifically. I just love the way that Leia commands the room at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. They would, as in this picture, they would raise their hand, but do so horizontally, just like pointing to the person who is currently speaking. This indicates that they want to add to what they are saying, that they are kind of continuing the conversation that the person speaking is saying. If someone wants to change the subject, so let's go back to that example. We're talking about Princess Leia as leader of the rebellion, and someone's like, I actually want to talk about Padme. I don't want to talk about Leia anymore. I want to talk about Padme. They're going to raise their hand vertically. So this, if you as the moderator were looking out in the audience, you can see, okay, there are 3 people with their hands raised vertically. That's 3 new topics. But then there are 2 people with their hands, horizontal. They want to continue on the same topic. And that means that you can prioritize the people who are continuing the same topic, the same conversation that's happening, rather than just, if everyone raises their hand and all you do is follow in the order of whoever raised their hand first, you might end up with things like, I really like what you're saying about Padme, but I want to go back to talking about Princess Leia. So this allows you to like curate the conversation because you at a glance can see who wants to talk about something new and who wants to keep going. It also gives you a good sense about when it's time to maybe move on. If you're seeing mostly hands raised vertically, then you've probably kind of said everything that needs to be said about whatever the current topic is, and it's time to move on to something new. So this is a useful guide for you to curate that. Other best practices. We recommend, again, as in other panels, that if people want to express appreciation for something insightful or that they enjoy, that they snap rather than clap. This can be especially important in roundtable discussions because you may or may not have microphones. I don't know exactly what the setup is going to be like, but clapping can be disruptive, and snapping is something people can talk over. Clapping, usually not. It's less intrusive. It's also better for folks that have sensory sensitivities. Lots of clapping can be very loud. So this is kind of the overview of the what I call the hands up method so that you can kind of curate the conversation. Other best practices, trying to prioritize people who raise their hands first. Exceptions. In general, we do recommend going in order of who raises their hands first. However, you may want to prioritize staying on topic versus a new topic. This again is why the hands up method is so useful, because it allows you to see at a glance who wants to stay on topic and who wants to move to something new. So that means you can bypass a couple of people who raise their hands first in order to stay on topic. The other exception is wanting to avoid letting someone dominate the conversation. You are probably going to get at least one person in a roundtable discussion who just has their hand kind of perma raised in the air. They have something to say about everything, and other folks might be more shy. So if you have one of those people who is just raising their hand all the time, you may want to prioritize people who have not spoken, and you may want to verbalize that in the same way that we do kind of in your I guess I'll call it long table panel instead of round table, that you might want to say hey, you've had a lot to say in the last 3 or 4 topics, which is great. I love your enthusiasm, love your energy. However, I want to hear from we want to make sure everyone in the room gets a chance to speak. So I'm going to kind of call on some other folks. And then you can call on other people first and maybe circle back around to that one person. Using best judgment. Oh, thank you, Jenna. I know you probably already left, but thank you for coming. Using your best judgment and reading the room when it comes to staying on one specific topic. Roundtable, you have a lot more leeway in terms of staying on topic versus moving on, because everyone is involved in the conversation. So it's a little bit easier to get a sense of, hey, everyone wants to keep talking about Dr. Afra. Let's keep talking about Dr. Afra. I know we had said that we wanted to talk about, Sonostaros, or we wanted to talk about Ray, but everyone seems to be happy talking about Dr. Afra, so we're going to keep talking about Dr. Afra. It's a lot easier to tell when you're in a roundtable discussion. Again, as in like the long table panels, feel free to propose rules for what can and can't be discussed. How do people feel about spoilers? If there was a recent thing that came out, are people comfortable? And you can pitch that at the beginning of the panel. Hey, I know we're talking about, Star Wars in the most recent season of, say, for example, that like Andor season 2 had just come out. You can say like, hey, I know this just came out a week ago. How do people feel talking about spoilers? Do we want to avoid it? And if people want to avoid it, then do. How do you want to handle triggering topics? If you get a sense that something might come up, you can feel free to set ground rules about how to handle that. Feel free to interrupt if someone is being disruptive or harmful. As with other panels, interrupting is part of your privilege in this situation. It is a privilege and a responsibility that, like, because you are the person in the room who is managing the conversation, you are responsible for interrupting when things go awry. If not you, then who else? And then if things get truly out of hand, please contact safety. They are going to be the people handling at the con. And then after the convention, you might need to contact them again. There's a safety form that you can fill out, or you might even need to contact the anti-abuse team. And then report what happened at the panel immediately afterwards. And then if you need to follow up kind of after the convention ends, you can follow up there as well. I'm going to try and keep things moving. Handling moderator missteps. Be humble. If part of facilitating the conversation is to be vigilant, then handling your own mistakes is about being humble. Mistakes happen, even to the best of us. The first thing I want to do before I kind of talk any further is I want to give a huge shout out. She's probably not here because she was at the first moderator training. Is Naomi Kritzer wrote an excellent essay that talks about how panels go wrong. And I believe that we're going to try to make that available somehow. And a lot of that, like most of the discussion that I have about handling unruly audience members and portions of this section of handling moderator missteps are just kind of cribbed from that essay and reformatted for you all. So I just want to give her a shout out. She did amazing work to provide this for me so that, and this has been provided in past cons as well. So yay, Naomi, great job. So what can go wrong as a moderator? This is ways that you might make a mistake. You can mess up a panelist's or audience member's name or pronouns. You could talk over someone or interrupt a panelist or an audience member in a way that makes them feel hurt. If they're not being abusive, they're not being disruptive, you might interrupt or talk over them. You might accidentally or on purpose say something offensive or hurtful. Hopefully not on purpose, but regardless of your intention, that can still happen. I'm sure there are other things that can happen. There probably are people who have been moderators in this room before who could give you some other examples of things that can go wrong as a moderator. So what do we do when that happens? This is what I call name it, claim it, and move along in the most respectful and thoughtful way possible. But I like providing these kind of pithy statements for you, so hopefully that it will be easier to remember, because I know I just kind of like I'm turning on a fire hose and just kind of giving you a bunch of information at once. So I'm trying to make it easy to digest and remember. So name it, claim it, move along. What does this mean? First things first is to listen. So if someone calls you out or if someone is responding to what you have done, it's vital that you hear them out and listen. Don't interrupt or justify. Don't tone police. Don't minimize or dismiss their feelings. Try to truly hear why they're hurt or upset, even if it doesn't make sense to you right away. If there's time, you can ask a clarifying question or two to make sure that you understand so that the person feels heard. However, you might need to follow up after the panel, which we will, get to at the very end. But the first thing to do is to listen. Name it. So this is the next thing to do. Name it. Acknowledge what you did. Whether we're calling ourselves out or someone else called us, the first thing that we can do is admit what we did. For example, oh gosh, I think I just mispronounced your name. Or you're right, I did just interrupt you. Say exactly what it is that you did that was hurtful. This is especially important, again, as I'm going to keep saying, when we have privilege in the conversation. If I, as a white moderator, mispronounce a Black panelist's name, it behooves me even more to acknowledge the ways that that what I did was hurtful or harmful. It's sometimes hard to not let shame or embarrassment get in the way of taking responsibility, but it is important that we try to do so as much as possible. In the panel is not necessarily the time to manage our feelings about what happened. If things get really overwhelming, you might need to step out. But hopefully it doesn't get that bad. Hopefully what we can do is just, in the moment, do what we can to name it, claim it, and move along. And then afterwards, we can go back to our own, hotel rooms. Or if we're doing it online, we can go to wherever we are. We can go and manage our feelings later. The most important thing to do in the room as a moderator is to make sure that the person feels heard and to take responsibility for ourselves. So after we name it, we claim it, we apologize. So in the context of this panel, it should be kept brief, but also express sincerity. We don't need to go on, but this is a hard balance. So I'm not saying I have exactly the right answer, and you're probably not always going to make everyone feel happy about the way that you handled it. But it is important that we try to both be brief and be sincere. So for example, I'm really sorry that I interrupted you. That was rude of me. Please continue. Again, trying to minimize self-flagellations, explanations, or justifications, minimizing dramatic displays of our own emotions in response to the event. Those are things that we can do. Like if we're having a lot of feelings about it, that's something that we can do separately, not in the panel, because we don't want the attention to shift from what we have done wrong and making sure the other person feels heard and that we've taken responsibility for it to our own feelings. We don't want to shift attention to that. And then move along. Don't get stuck in the moment. It is really easy to get flustered, especially if we feel ashamed or guilty about what we did or said. But do your best to gracefully shift the conversation back to the panel. If you've done all of the above, it should be a lot easier to encourage everyone to get back to the topic at hand. If you've listened, if you've named it, if you've acknowledged what you've done and apologized, it should be easier to move things back to the panel. If someone is getting stuck on the mistake, it might be best to follow up, which is the next step. Because following up is something where you can do when you can more thoroughly discuss what happened without taking time away from the panel. So depending on what the mistake was, you might need to be willing to connect after the panel in order for the person that you've injured to truly feel heard and respected. Being willing, and if things get truly bad, if the person who's injured asks for a mediator, asks to speak with safety or anti-abuse, please accept their wishes and contact the appropriate comm personnel. So this is something we need to be willing to do. Hopefully this will not happen. Hopefully that the mistakes are fairly minimal and that we will be able to, by naming it, claiming it, moving along, being willing to follow up, we won't need to follow up with safety or anti-abuse, but if the person asks for it, we should respect their desires. They just might feel more comfortable with a third party in the room. So putting it all together, I'm going to give you an example. There are plenty more. This is just one example that I can offer to kind of help you see what this might look like in conversation. So one of my panelists is discussing their experience with ableism, and I respond with a personal anecdote. It's meant to be funny or to transition to a new question. However, what I said made them feel dismissed or that I was correcting them, telling them that their experience wasn't valid because mine is different. Here is a way that I could respond if I was called out. If I understand you correctly, the comment I made felt dismissive and inappropriate. Is that correct? The person will tell you. Yes, that did. Yes, that was hurtful. Then you respond with, thank you for telling me. I hear you. I'm sorry that I spoke over you about ableism, that I was offensive in, providing that anecdote. I'm not sure if we have time in this panel to fully unpack all of what this means to you, but I would like to have that conversation. Can we follow up after the panel? So I have done all those things. I've listened, I've heard what they had to say. I have admitted what I did to their face. I have apologized. I have offered to follow up. And if they took me up and said, yes, let's follow up after the panel, then I would say, great, thank you so much. Okay, if I remember correctly, we were talking about Dr. Afra. Let's get back to talking about Dr. Afra. That might be how something might look. Sure, there are other ways to do it. I just kind of wanted to give people a sense of what it might look like to put all these things together. So finally, managing audience Q&A. Overview. We're going to let the audience know when and how Q&A is going to happen when we introduce the panel. So the panels are an hour and 15 minutes. We might say we're going to have an hour discussion and we're going to save time for 15 minutes of Q&A. That's the plan. As I've said before, letting the audience participate during the panel is not recommended. It can be disruptive. This is different if you're doing a roundtable panel, roundtable discussion, but for long table panelists, we don't recommend letting the audience participate during the panel. If everyone agrees and you want to do it that way, that's fine. It's just not recommended. And as I said when we talked earlier, if the panel goes long, you can refer the audience to the Discord. So if you run out of time for your Q&A, feel free to refer the audience to the Discord, and some people might want to go there. During Q&A, it is important that you upfront remind the audience to stay on topic, speak loudly, and be succinct. We don't want, rambling. This is more of a comment than a question of someone talking for like 4 minutes when you only have 15 minutes of Q&A. Repeat questions into the microphone or ask the audience member to do so if necessary. This is especially important if you have a big room. If you're in one of the bigger rooms, sometimes a Q&A, an audience member that's in the back of the room, not everyone can hear them. So you might need to encourage them to come up and speak into a microphone. That is perfectly fine. As with during the panel discussion, do your best to maintain audience, flow and equitable participation. If you have one person that raises their hand 5 times, if no one else is raising their hand, feel free to keep calling on them. But if not, if there are other people who want to talk, make sure that you are spreading out the Q&A for as much as possible. When we talked about online panels, I mentioned that you might want to make a list of questions as you see them come up during the panel. And then when Q&A starts, you can read audience questions yourself so that everyone can hear them. And you may also want to repeat questions in an online panel. You may want to read them out loud yourself anyway, rather than asking people to read a question on screen if you can highlight it in that way. Try to include as many different people as possible. It's very similar to maintaining flow and equitable participation. Make sure that you're keeping track of time, just like in the regular panel, the regular part of the panel, the main part. It can be, if there are a bunch of people who have questions, this is going to be harder to do, but please make sure you're doing that. If possible, if there's time, you may want to wrap up your audience Q&A with like a couple of minutes before you have to be done, and then you can allow the panelists to offer ways that they can be found on social media. This is just a suggestion. Not everyone will want this, but some people might. So that you can say, hey, we were having such a really good conversation. Feel free to find me on Twitter at @G_lovesbooks, and we can keep talking about this. Or let's go to the Discord channel and talk about it. This came up as a really good suggestion after the last training, so it didn't make it into the slide, but a pro tip that if you want to avoid misgendering an audience member, try to refer to them to something that they're wearing or another distinctive mark. For example, you in the second row wearing the baseball cap and the black biker jacket, or in the back left with the purple hair and sparkly glasses. That way we're not accidentally using misgendering an audience member. We just never know. Unless they have it on their badge and you can see it, then it's easier to just refer to them by something that makes them distinctive and visible, so that they know who's being called on and you're not accidentally misgendering them. So that was a really helpful suggestion from the last panel. So what happens if audience members get unruly? This will hopefully not happen. This is not a common experience, but it might happen. So we want to make sure that you're prepared for the possibility if things get out of hand. So first thing to do, setting expectations up front whenever possible. This is a part of what we discussed in the last time, making people aware if there are topics that you don't want to talk about, how much time is going to be provided. You might even, if you can guess that something where a problem might go wrong, sometimes you can. Sometimes you can see, we're in a panel talking about Star Wars or talking about relationships between romantic relationships in Star Wars. Someone might get spicy about Reylo, or someone might get spicy about, Han and Leia. Someone could get spicy about something. And you can set expectations when you start audience Q&A. You're welcome to include that as part of your ground rules. We're not going to talk about Reylo. Like, we're not here to, judge people for their ships. So if you're feeling spicy and you want to judge people for their ships, do it elsewhere. We're not here for that. Or we're not here to advocate for eugenics. And anyone who goes in that direction, I'm going to ask you to stop. This is a no conspiracy theory zone. It is the position of this panel that COVID mitigation is worthwhile, and we're not going to debate that today. If there's anything that you can kind of see coming down the line based on your panel topic, you are welcome to set those expectations ahead of time, because then the audience members know. And then if they start talking about it, you have already made it clear that the answer is no, that you can't talk about that, and you can shut that down immediately. Number 2, interrupt. If you can tell that things are starting to go badly, the first thing that you do, like if you said, we're not going to talk about conspiracy theories, and someone starts talking about it, interrupt, shut it down as soon as possible. You are empowered to interrupt an audience member if they are heading in a direction that could be dangerous or harmful. And you want to do that. That sets a clear, firm line, and often puts them just enough off of their, if they're gearing up for a rant, interrupting them and just saying, no, we're not going to do that today, can sometimes be just enough to get them to stop. You might have to keep going, but sometimes it might put them off balance enough that you can end it as quickly as possible. It's uncomfortable, but this is really important thing to do as a moderator. You are empowered to do it. I believe in you. You're allowed. You can start politely, but just saying, excuse me, I said we're not going to talk about that. But if you have to, escalate. The example from Nomi Kritzer's essays is like, excuse me, nope. Hey, excuse me, I'm going to stop you right there. Stop now, stop talking. This can end with something like, can someone in the back please go get someone from safety if necessary? So yeah, feel free to start nice, but if they don't respect when you are politely interrupting them, feel free to get as firm as you possibly can. Name the problem. Number 3, be specific and be honest. That's transphobic. We're not going to discuss whether transphobia is justified. That's a conspiracy theory. I already said we're not going to talk about that. What you just said was a racist stereotype, and it is unacceptable here at WisCon. So label it. You want to make sure everyone knows what the problem is. This both helps people who might not be entirely aware of what's going on, and also if there are people in the room who are being harmed, say it is a transphobic comment, and there are people in the room who are trans, whether they are visibly so or not, whether you know they are or not, having someone label the problem is validating in and of itself. It shows that you respect and you care because you're willing to call a spade, and we want to do that as much as we can. We want people to feel safe, and part of safety is acknowledging the reality of what is happening. If you have to fall back on something like that was not okay, feel free to do so. 4, allow a response from someone else. When something has gone wildly off the rails, you usually see a lot of people who are ready to jump in and kind of take it on. If you can, call on someone who is, the description that Naomi provided was call on someone who's sitting closest to the front, preferably someone you know will deliver a firm and emphatic response. If you're a moderator in a panel where you think that there are going to be potential dangers, if you kind of know ahead of time there might be problems, you may want to designate like have a friend who can fill this role ahead of time and just say, hey, I'd really like you to, I know that you want to come to this panel. And I trust you to be someone who can step in as necessary. Can you be like my sworn shield who sits near the front? And if things go wrong, you can step in and provide a response. If you don't have a pre-designated person, which can happen if you don't know if a panel is going to go awry, there is usually a specific bodily language that you can recognize as like, I'm ready to smack someone down. Typically very straight raised arm combined with a grim facial expression. It's the like, you have my sword, I'm going to step in and lay down some truth. Letting someone else do this has advantages, including it gives you, the moderator, a minute to collect yourself. And plus it means that like someone else can then talk for a long time about it. That you don't have to be responsible. If you don't have the words to manage this, you can designate it to someone else and give them the freedom to do it so that you can kind of figure out what you want your next steps to be. Optional, you can add one or two more, you can allow space for one or two more responses. So this can, if people are still upset after like the smack has been laid down by the first person, if people are still upset, look for someone who's a member of whatever group was just attacked or harmed. Don't call them out. If it was a white person who said something racist and there are Black people in the room and none of them are raising their hand to speak, don't call anyone out. Don't specifically call them out. But if you see someone who is from that marginalized group, visibly so, if it is easy to recognize, definitely make space for them to speak. There is a difference between the kind of you have my sword mentality and you have hurt me specifically. We do want to make space for people who are directly harmed to speak. But if none of them want to, which is fine, they don't have to, don't call them out. 6 is looking for lifelines. This is an optional thing. It's tricky to balance giving someone the benefit of the doubt with the potential for creating more space for them to do harm or justification if they let them keep talking. But if the person who said the thing is looking remorseful, and especially if it's one of your panelists, after allowing the first couple of responses, you can invite the person back into the conversation. You don't have to, but you can invite them back with, would you like to reframe what you just said? Or would you like to apologize? So you can make space for that. However, you're not obligated to, especially if you get the sense that they're probably going to grab a shovel and keep digging themselves into a deeper hole. You are not required, but you can make space for a lifeline if you want to and it feels right. Redirect. So again, this is going to be a balance, balancing getting back on track in the panel with making sure that everyone feels heard. So if people are very upset, this may take up more time. If what was said was particularly harmful or particularly upsetting, it may take up more space in the panel than expected. But if you get the sense that after a couple of people have spoken and the person has apologized, that people are kind of ready, feel free to be like, okay, we were talking about Star Wars. Let's get back to talking about Star Wars. How do we feel about that? And then redirect the conversation back. And then finally, report. If something gets out of hand and you have to interrupt and redirect in this manner, always contact safety. Even if you feel like the incident was minor and resolved, safety needs to know about it. So always contact safety. Try to get the name of the person if you can. Write down some notes about what they said as soon as you can after the panel, because your memory is going to fade quickly. So as soon as possible after the panel that you can get this information and send it to safety, the better. If you are using a digital version of this, like either the PDF or this PowerPoint, there is a link there for the online form to contact safety, or you can also send them an email, safety@wiscon.net. So always follow up with safety, no matter how minor, even if it's resolved, safety needs to know about it. All right, wrapping it up. I just threw a lot at you. I just spoke for like 80-something minutes and gave you a bunch of information. So I'm just going to hit kind of the main points before we leave. Moderators facilitate conversations before and during the convention, both online and in person. Short, brief definition of what it means to be a moderator. Whether you are moderating online, in person, long table or round table discussions, or even during audience Q&A, remember the Modder method, not the Mordor method, the Modder method. Keep it moving, keep it on topic, don't forget the clock, and respect your panelists. MODR. If you mess up, name it, claim it, move along. If an audience member or panelist causes harm or disruption, interrupt. So I'm thinking about this as R's. You want to interrupt, you want to allow responses, you want to redirect and report. It's the brief version of all of what I just said. So those are your main points. Finally, the final thoughts that I have is thank you. This con could not run without you as moderators. We know, everyone at the con knows that you are giving of your time and energy to be involved in a unique way, that you may not be as noticed and celebrated as publicly as the panelists are. We truly could not do this without you, and we deeply appreciate everything that you are doing. Give yourself some snaps. And finally, have fun. Being a part of interesting conversations is a delight. I love it. That's why I love being a moderator. And moderators go a long way towards making these panels enjoyable, thrilling space for people from all walks of life to come together and talk, which is what WisCon is all about. And you are essential to that. And you get to be an integral part of what makes the magic of WisCon happen and what makes it such a special place. So go ahead, enjoy yourself, have fun. And if you have any questions or comments, please contact panels@wiscon.net. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I feel like we can probably stop recording, right? There we go.